So to begin this presentation, well, first of all, we're at the Seas of Change Club. And so this is sort of like what we consider to be a think tank of exploration of ideas and what we call technologies to sort of address some of the larger issues that our society and our world are facing. So just to begin this presentation, we're going to run through some of these technologies, just so you have a little bit of background of where we're coming from and what we've been looking at. And then we'll have a more comprehensive explanation of how they all fit together. So if it seems a little scattered in the beginning, it's more of like a contextualizing thing. So I'm Lydia, and I'm going to start briefly by talking about two different technologies that we're looking at. The first is ideas and systems that have been implemented by a man named Muhammad Yunus. So he is from Bangladesh, and he's a Nobel Prize winner. He's has all these accolades and awards. He's a member of the UN. He's on the board, and just a pretty amazing figure. This is him right here in his book. And so he has two ideas. One is social business, and the other is social banking. And social banking is started in like the 80s, I think 83, when he started the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh. And so his sort of why, his intention, his passion behind this was his belief that credit is a fundamental human right, and that poverty is systematically created, so it can be systematically uncreated or, kind of solved. And his goal was really to empower people versus just to help them. And so he started out with a PhD in economics and then moved into this journey of establishing the Grameen Bank, which provides loans, microloans he calls them, so like very small loans, on terms suitable and compassionate for the people. So there's no interest rates. He works with the individuals to make sure that it's something that they feel like is reasonable and that they can get paid back. And he primarily focuses in rural areas, in places of extreme poverty, and also on women. So he found that giving loans to women, there's much higher success rates in getting the repayments versus giving loans to men. So that's just sort of the route that he's taken. And let's see, it's been really successful. So this bank has given out $21 billion in loans, $19 billion of which have been paid back since he started the bank in '83. And something else that I think is interesting about it is that the borrowers are actually owners of the bank. So 94% of the bank is owned by the different borrowers. And so like through that process, he's actually educating the borrowers and teaching them financial skills and entrepreneurial skills so that they can sort of uplift themselves by getting these loans and aren't actually getting in more debt, which I think the banking system that we know of kind of does. 5% of Grameen's participants rise out of poverty every year. So there's pretty large success, and like you can see why he would win a Nobel Prize through these endeavors. And then so social business was sort of an off branch of this. And these are businesses created to address social problems. So rather than focusing on profit, it's focused on addressing a social issue. For him, poverty is pretty much the big one, but he finds others within that realm that help to eradicate poverty. And something I think important to note is that these businesses are non-loss and non-dividend, which means that they're financially self-sustainable and the profits are reinvested into the business or used to create more social businesses. So it is sort of like a cyclical system that's sustainable and actually produces more businesses that help social issues versus just maintaining the one. And a quote that I think fits into what we're exploring in terms of looking at these ideas that he said is, all human beings are born entrepreneurs. Some get a chance to unleash that capacity. Some never got that chance, never knew that he or she had that capacity. And something that we're looking at a lot is uplifting everyone to be creative and feel like they can be entrepreneurs and sort of be empowered through these systems. And the second one I briefly want to touch on are fractals. So fractals, really complicated, and I think we're also trying to wrap our heads around them ourselves, but we find a lot of correlation between fractals and what we're looking at here. And just to briefly define them in a really simple way, fractals are never-ending patterns. They're infinitely complex and are self-similar across different scales. They are created by repeating a simple process over and over again on an ongoing feedback loop. Fractals are images of dynamic systems, the picture of chaos. and geometrically they exist between our familiar dimensions. And they're extremely familiar because fractals exist within most natural systems. We see them, like in our heartbeat and in the electricity in the sky and in the way that water freezes into snowflakes. So it's sort of like they have been able to explain systematically and mathematically the chaotic nature of the universe. And I think an important note is that they're really practical. They've been used to do a lot of things in terms of designing networks on the internet, disease diagnosis, like creating graphics on the computer, etc. And they're a way to understand the complexity of systems and, like I said, the chaotic nature. So they can kind of predict the unpredictable. And how they relate to what we're looking at is that they're, one of their characteristics is that they have this ability to grow virally, both in expansion and inwardly. So like you can kind of infinitely zoom in onto a fractal. And it's a complex structure arising from the application of simple rules. So that sort of aligns with our efforts of creating small changes on a massive scale. And then also just like their sort of their nature of being replicating themselves. By the way, this is an example. So yeah, they're constantly replicating themselves over and over again, and that's sort of what creates that pattern. And so like with the ideas that we're exploring here, we hope that they too can be replicated and spread and shared. So we want to share our knowledge so that it can spread virally, like fractals do.
Hello. So one of the components that we've talked about a lot that I've been researching more deeply into is the idea of Prout, which is a system, a technology really that has been developed by P.R. Sarkar back in the 70s, and it's a model for economic, a system, a socioeconomic system that empowers the natural impulses of an individual and acknowledges the interdependence of us with our environment and each other. So it has been really great as for us to get an idea of the history of why capitalism is the way that it is, like what kind of built up to this modern capitalism that we have, as well as kind of reaffirming that we're not the only ones thinking about this, that we're not the first people to believe that this sort of thing is possible, but this is kind of a technology and knowledge that's been popping up and spreading all over the world, and we're tapping into that and trying to bring it here. So the interesting thing is that it goes into the micro details of how to implement this kind of system, down to ideas for revolutionizing agricultural, education, all these different sectors. So it's a really pragmatic step-by-step of how we can make an impact by restructuring the system from the ground up, with the human being in mind rather than the top-down with profit in mind. I think it resonates a lot with people who have some sort of connection with spirituality, just not religion, I wouldn't say, but just on the basis of feeling connected to the well-being of others around you, and also to your own knowledge of your needs and your wants and your deepest desires and fears, and how that correlates to your outside environment, how you can be empowered towards achieving what can fulfill you through connecting with others and building a system that respects the environment that you live in and that you depend on for survival. Yeah, so I just actually learned that there's even more that I can get into on this later, so yes, thank you.
Can you be a full-time representative?
Sure.
Hello everybody, I'm Julie. I'm going to talk about two of these things. One of them is the torus and the other is start with why. So first of all, the torus. What is the torus? It's a donut-shaped geometrical phenomenon that represents how energy moves in its most balanced dynamic flow process. Energy flows through the center vortex and out the other vortex, which you can see that pink donut shape. The very simplified explanation of the torus energy system that it's seen very often in the universe, and it is considered by many to display the most sustainable, perfect energy flow system. The center vortex of the donut is the point of ultimate balance and centered stillness, which connects the rest of the system and unifies it. The torus dynamic flow process is observable in plants, trees, weather patterns, magnetic fields, smoke, water, and more. It can be applied to all sorts of things, and we hope to apply it to Awareness Corp by designing a system that allows energy to flow in this sustainable pattern. So the people participating in Awareness Corp will put in energy and resources, and those things will flow back out to directly benefit and be given to those people and other people as well. So Start With Why, down here, was originally a book by Simon Sinek, and he also had a TED Talk that was very successful and had over 25 million views. And his idea can be broken down into 3 main parts. The first one was, if you want to inspire others, always start with your why, your reason for doing this thing that you're doing. 2, excited employees are the best resource for any business. And 3, you don't need any sketchy sales tactics when you are starting with your why. It's best to build your business around a cause and with people who share your why, also known as your passion and reason behind starting the business, company, nonprofit, etc. So don't try to cheat people into investing into your idea. People will gain interest if you passionately express your why, and through that they'll connect with you emotionally because they share the same enthusiasm for your cause. And they'll invest. More and more people will invest, and your idea will grow. So after this is established, it's much easier to move into addressing the what, the how, where, when, and so on. And this is also something we would like to incorporate into our awareness work. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Glad you all can make it. I'm Julian. I'll be talking about permaculture, industrial revolution, and then I'm going to talk about what's on the board over here so we can all get a good grasp of what Seed to Change is about and what Awareness Corp is about. So actually, let's start with industrial revolution first because that'll lead better on. So this idea was started by a man named Jeremy Rifkin, who is actually an environmentalist, economist, not environmentalist, pardon me. He's an economist, and he's very well renowned, and he's written this book. And basically, he just talks about how our current state in society here in America and around the world has begun to stagnate. We see that GDP begins to slow down, and we're having a decline in productivity across the board. We also are having higher unemployment rates, and there seems to be 20 years of slow growth currently, and it might continue on for a little bit. But Rifkin feels that this third industrial revolution will kickstart that productivity to re-emerge and regrow itself. And he feels that the 3 technologies that will begin this revolution are first and foremost free communication, which is what we have through the internet, free energy, which is what we will begin to have through solar and wind, and then finally free transportation. And this will, he says, will increase our aggregate efficiency in an economic terms. That means our efficiency to complete tasks and our productivity in doing those tasks. So we can we can break through this threshold that is currently holding us down for being more productive, and all these new technologies coming together will jumpstart a lot of different things like infrastructure for energy networks that will be able, that you and I will each have solar panels that will then profit us. They will make us money. And then that money can either be choose to put back into our own businesses or sold to someone else for our income. That is his idea. He also talks about basically the concept of this industrial evolution allowing more communication and a change in ethics. So we're trying to incorporate this idea into Awareness Corps because we feel like these new technologies will allow us to create this sharing economy within our small non-government organization and try to further that sharing between one another. Furthermore, permaculture ethics build into the ethics we want to ground Awareness Corps in. The three ethical values are first, care for the earth, and then care for the people, and then fair trade between. So making sure that it's equitable, that I created food, for example, in my garden, and I want to be making money that's actually going to sustain that business. Making sure that's a fair way of doing that. And this idea was actually created by a guy named Bill Morrison, and you can look up his book called Permaculture. And I just pulled some, information from the beginning of the book, and I really feel that there's a great quote right here where he says, "The ideal way in which to spend one's time is in the perfection of the expression of life. To lead the most involved life possible and to assist and celebrate the existence of life forms other than humans, for we all come from the same egg." And this, moving on to Awareness Corps and more of like our vision, the goal, and then just some objectives. So before we were talking about why, and so to begin here, this is actually just like a diagram that my director, Sonia Marcus, who works here at the Office of Sustainability, showed me. And she basically said, when you're trying to come up with an idea or you have a project, you need to start out with the vision. And then once we create this vision, we can begin to ask, how are we going to have this vision come to fruition? And so in our example, we're going to start out with our vision of, which is that we want to free the human potential so that harmony and small change can happen at large scales. So that's like our vision for this Awareness Corps. And we're going to ask how we're going to make that happen. And we're going to want to make that happen through conveying Awareness Corps in an easy and accessible manner. And then we're going to ask again how, and we're going to do that by creating a documentary, and we have a website that we're working on currently, and then tasks. And we can move up and down this ladder using how to move down and why to move up. For example, why do we want this documentary to take place? Because we want to convey this idea to more people. And why do we want to convey this idea to more people? Because we want to unlock the human potential that is within all of us and to create harmony between us. So that's sort of a good way of showing like what we want through this and like the action we're going to be taking to make this happen. So that's basically simply some technologies we are using, and I think Sebastian will take over and lead us further. And I appreciate your time.
Sebastian, did you need?
Do it in a little bit. So we have two terms. We're talking about two terms here. One of them is Seeds of Change, and the other one is Awareness Corps. So Seeds of Change, as you can see, is the exploration of these different technologies. And why we call them technologies is because if you consider the wheel, what at the beginning was a technology. It was that changed completely the world. And these are actually current technology things that are actually proven and out there that are empowering the individual and allowing him to make an impact at a massive scale in the world. This is something that we don't really see normally in the academic environment, and that's why this Seeds of Change was created. And then, as we run through these different technologies, we condense it or funnel them down to the term of Awareness Corp, which is how we're gonna tie things together. So I'm gonna talk about the last two, which happen to be the beginning and the end, the crowdfunding and blockchain. Actually, I'm gonna start with the end. What blockchain is. This new technology, whose unprecedented characteristics ensures tamper-proof transactions and transparency, removing the middleman, removing corruption. It will guarantee recirculation and decentralization on systems across the board. That's the minimal amount of information that I can say about blockchain, but it's how it will apply. And then, before I go into crowdfunding, I like to say, to ask that question: how do we free human potential so that harmony and small change can happen at a large scale, rapidly? That's what we are confronted with, because as perhaps most of us consider, we're going through a liminal time in the world. It could either mean a great collapse or a great expansion. So being aware of that is one of the first things to consider. And why we're exploring this in this way, why are we approaching this in this way, is because Awareness Corp is a multidimensional system, and it cannot be just put in a nutshell. That's why it's so difficult. That's why it's so complex. But all of these technologies or schools of thought are actually pointing towards it, because in a certain way, we feel that there's this term coined by Carl Jung, synchronicity, that whenever a species finds out something, it kind of like correlates within other species. They have talked about it in the case of a monkey, that he figured out how to open coconuts in this island, and then it happened to be that far away in another continent, monkeys happened to started doing the same thing. That's what it points out about synchronicity. So the limitation of the current system. The current economic system supports only endeavors that are aligned and demonstrate profitability and return on investment on an ever-growing scale. That's the current system, and that's the limitation. Let me say it again. The current economic system supports only endeavors that are aligned and demonstrate profitability and return on investment on an ever-growing scale. This means that ideas that do not meet the standards are discarded, no matter whether they bring social, environmental, or personal prosperity. The decision-making power is limited by few, and only if it meets certain criteria set by banks. Because of that limitation, a new system emerged, a new economic model surfaced, which is crowdfunding, which is a way in which we support endeavors that make sense to the whole, to the crowd. We all pull together and decide what is to be created in this world. Then we have Muhammad Yunus, a Bangladeshi social entrepreneur, as Lydia was talking to us, and he created. One thing that I found very interesting is about what the Norwegian Nobel Committee said about him when they awarded him with the Nobel Prize. They said that lasting peace cannot be achieved unless large population groups find ways in which to break out of poverty, and that across cultures and civilizations. He also coined the term social business, businesses where profits only recirculate and whose main goal is to solve a problem and bring prosperity for the employees and the community. And the core belief that we have is that we believe that the best, most immediate, effective action to address the world's greatest challenges is the one that is unifying, economically viable, and the one that you enjoy doing. And if I was to put Awareness Corp in a nutshell, that's what I would say about it. So the point here is how to shift the entire world, from a survival mode into a creative mode, and has been approached by different people. Very influential people like Elon Musk has been talking about the worldwide minimum wage, and that's an effort in order to change the world from a survival mode into a creative mode. Because yes, there's people that are going to benefit from not doing anything and getting paid, but there's other people that most of us are going to get bored and is going to start creating things, because that's the essence of human, to be creative, to adapt to new challenges. So there is a way of transcend our limitations, and it's understanding and replicating the successful systems that we find in nature. So let's start with the
How do we switch to
this is crowdfunding, which means power to the people, support new ideas, and create creative solutions. Muhammad Yunus, community bank, and social businesses. We have the Taurus, which is again the essential form in which awareness corps, the concept of awareness corps rely on. And the important thing about here is the Taurus is the fundamental form of balanced energy flow found in sustainable systems at all scales. And the important thing about this is that it's not only a geometrical form, it represents a process, a dynamic process. It's how we recirculate energy. And it's a proven organizational system that happens throughout nature and the universe. Then we have fractals, as Lydia was talking to us. Fractals are infinite complex patterns that are self-similar across different scales. They are created by replicating a simple process over and over again on an ongoing feedback loop. How this relates to Awareness Corp is the fact that as this concept comes into manifestation, once it's understood, it can be replicated anywhere else. So it's a decentralization, and as it grows in the shape of, it grows in a fractal, it has a fractal growth. That's what Awareness Corp is. Then we have the blockchain, as we said, the tamper-proof, no middleman, no corruption. This was the last edition. We came across it and this over this past summer, and why it was so revolutionary for us is that in order to recirculate resources, there's got to be, we have experience throughout human existence that the ones that control tend to perhaps abuse the power or the ability to reallocate resources. With this technology, that wouldn't be a case. As long as there's an algorithm, this algorithm will take care of the redistribution or recirculation of energy or capital or resources, which I'm going to get to it later. We have Jeremy Rifkin's, as Julian was talking about. And what I would like to mark is the importance and relatively inevitability of shared economies. As is happening, things like Napster, YouTube, people are putting information out there without really their main motivation is not profit. The main motivation is to share. And we're embracing these new technologies where we're coming to the age of sharing economy, where we're going to have electric cars that are going to be driving themselves, and we can share, and we don't have to have that much of concern for private property. Starting with why. This is finding your call, doing things with a purpose. You know, if we motivate people, if he introduces an insight that is when doing things with a purpose, once you ask why, you start to consider what you really enjoy doing, what your call is. And this is how true success comes from acting from that place. We have a concept that is many other concepts where, for example, liquid democracy is a technology, it's the fact that technology now makes democracy very simple. And once blockchain comes into be the main player, democracy will be accessed through our phones. We will be able to vote and decide about things that are directly influencing us or affecting us. There's another another technology or insight about finding your call. Joseph Campbell was an anthropologist, and he discovered that all throughout civilizations and cultures, we have a common narrative about the human experience, the challenges that we find. And this is about finding your call. And what I would like to say about finding your call is that harmony and allocation happens when humans have the ability to find their call. I'm gonna let that sink in because it's an essential understanding that we find once people become happier, and once people are happy, people are more willing to share, to collaborate with each other. Once you're just so concerned about your own personal gain and your personal identity, you don't have time to think outside the box. So permaculture, again, what Julian was telling us, is effectively replicating nature's ways, is how it all comes about. So this is what Seeds of Change is. You gotta click on continuous and we'll This is what Awareness Corp is. The funneling down all these technologies. So when you think about Awareness Corp, think about an organism in the shape of a torus, where it's an organism that is conformed by cells. And what we call cells is particularly every new endeavor that people want to approach, a new idea, that has an intentional aspect about helping the world, helping either the environment or the social. It has a social impact or environmental impact. So a cell is, as I said before, when I said that we believe that the best, most immediate, effective action to address the world's greatest challenges has to be unified and economically viable, and the one you enjoy doing. An idea, a new endeavor, has to be an economically viable endeavor at the beginning. And is unifying is when it becomes part of an organism. And it's when you enjoy doing it, is when you find your call and understand that by being part of a conscious system or a system that interacts and has a common the intention of a common well-being, that's when empowerment happens. So think about Awareness Corp in the sense, how it does it work? Think about a pot in the middle where all these cells pull in 51% of their net revenue, net profit. I'm going to get to it. How is that going to happen? But if you click once again, as that happens, with those, once we pool those resources efficiently, a new resources to create a new cell will be pooled, and as a new cell is born, another one, then a recirculation happens where these cells, once these cells becomes part of the system. In order to be part of the system, you have to relinquish first the personal gain. You have to put first the world and second your personal gain. So once you put the world first, meaning that you're embarking on an endeavor that has environmental impact or social impact. Once you have that, and then you also decide that in order to belong to this system, as 51% of your net profits will be recirculated into the system in order to create new cells. And as those cells are created, they will start the recirculation process. So as you can see, that's the fractal growth. And as it does, it happens actually as a snowball effect. And that's how we're going to be able to release human potential so that harmony and small change can happen at a massive scale, rapidly. And as you can see, as I was explaining, the torus and the pooling of the 51% profit, which is the agreement that you come in and you then allocation happens right here, and then creation happens here, and it recirculates. So the whole idea is how to recirculate resources or energy efficiently. Again, coming from the perspective of a cell that belongs to an organism, which means harmony, balance, and autonomy. I'd like to point out the word autonomy, because in the cell, you're not telling your cells what to do. The cells themselves are autonomous. When a new cell happens in this system, the decisions about how to run your system, your endeavor, how to do things, is completely up to you. You can run it down to the ground. But the only two things that you cannot do: you cannot opt out, you cannot sell your your cell or your endeavor, and you have to be part of this recirculation of resources. Those are the two criteria that happen. But as far as autonomy, as far as you doing your thing, the idea is that if you are doing what you love to do, what you enjoy doing, and you're creating change into the world, either environmental or social, and you're happy doing that, the fact is that you're going to be successful. That's what we touch into the idea of why, starting with why. Let's continue. And here's the organizational structure. Here's where the torus becomes important. Because as you can see, these are people, it's conformed by people that put the world first and then the personal interest second. Then resources are pooled and there's only allocation power. And how this allocation power happens is in the same way that crowdfunding right now, how crowdfunding works, in which all of the cells that belong to the system decide what new endeavor is to be supported. And once that a new endeavor is created, then allocation happens. Then we start creating vertical and horizontal integrations. We are working together. We're not competing. We are supporting each other. And we are, there could be suppliers and retailer being part of the same thing. There is a circle of trust that happens. And there's no middleman because nobody's really allocating this. It will be through the blockchain and through the crowdfunding platform. We will ensure that nobody is an empty center, meaning that nobody has the power to run this into their specific agenda or anything like that. Which is the principle of direct democracy. When we have direct democracy, we are addressing, by deciding what is to be created, we are solving problems, small problems, in our surroundings. And at some point, when this snowball grows as its exponential potential, we will be able to support even bigger endeavors. For example, if you think like scientists and people that are graduating from universities, once they come out of it, they're doing this research which require incredible amounts of money and equipment. Where are they going to get that? Where are they going to, either they go to the government or they go to a private corporation, Monsanto or something like that, So then those are the choices that they have, but they don't have an opportunity to free their potential and find out ways in which they can solve problems are large. And at some point, there will be so much recirculation that we want the endeavors not necessarily are going to have to be for resources. They don't have to be driven by profit. At some point, we will be able to support artists. We will be able to support activists, people that are putting their work out there and really, because there will be so much resources being recirculated. Once again, the principle. And this is a very important diagram. Capitalism has brought us up to here. It has created expansion. When you think about me first, if you see, for example, this could be Trump Tower. This could be Elon Musk or Apple. They all pool the resources in order to specialize into something. And they were very, it was great because it functioned like everything that we're enjoying right now is thanks to capitalism. But we are coming to a point where it's a linear system, and you cannot run a linear system on a finite planet indefinitely. So we need to come to the point of allocation when we need to fold these petals inside because we live in a finite planet. And in order to do that, we need to put the world, the well-being of this beautiful planet first before we put our self-interest. But our self-interest will be part of it. And the important thing about this is that success and economical success is not neglected. If you're successful, if you continue to grow your ideas, you can vouch for more expansion. You can be as rich as you want to be, but at the same time it's helping the world because it's recirculating those resources. So it doesn't negate the ability of being comfortable or having luxuries. So as I was saying, this system, the pyramid system that we're in, the competition, the fittest of the fittest, it has come to a point where it's not going to work anymore. There's not going to be resources for everybody to do the same thing. So competition is more harsh. So it had created expansion, and competitive created quality. And this is the current system that we have. And then, so again, maybe I said that I couldn't put it in a nutshell, but I could say that perhaps here would be a beautiful way of putting it. Currently, which is the current structure, the world currently needs to change its mentality. So a new order in order to transcend our limitations. And something that Lydia pointed out to me, this symbol could be misleading to some people because they might think that it's religious. But this is actually the 2D representation of the torus. The torus is represented in this. And that's the key element. All right. Yeah.
I can see it. Alrighty, hello, my name's Elijah. So we recognize that this is a very complex idea. There's a lot of moving parts. It took a while for us to explain it. How long has it been? Like 30, 40 minutes? So that's kind of hard to explain to new people if we don't have a setting like this. So a pragmatic approach that we have come to as a way of translating this idea to the masses is making a documentary, which I will be directing. Our production is set for March, and we were hoping to get a few of you all interested in to interview for this project and talk about some of these issues, because we're students, we're seeking an education, but at the same time, we recognize that a lot of people don't see us as a credible source for an idea like this. And adding individuals, such as some of you in the room, will help us translate this idea. So, this is a rough outline of the documentary that we're going to start shooting in March, so that it's ready in time for a viewing on campus at our Mindfulness Fest in late April. Simultaneously, we're also going to be working on a website to pull in all these ideas and add any other research that couldn't make it into the documentary, and also serve as a sort of way for people to follow up once they've seen the film and are looking for more information or ways to get involved in this project. Basically, the whole goal behind making this is so that we could just post it online for free, share it all around the internet, and hopefully catch the interest of other people in the world. I'd like to say that people in this club, this student organization, come from a variety of different backgrounds. We're studying a variety of different majors. I think we're a good representation of the student body. And yeah, we may not be in the real world yet, we're still students, but I think we're very motivated and we're capable of doing a project like this. I've worked on a couple documentaries in the past, and I'm working with Conrad there in the back. We're probably going to add a couple more people on the technical side to make sure that this is something that's very digestible, and possibly even making a shorter version that can be more easily shared around social media. Yeah, that's it for the most part. I think we're going to open it up for questions and mingling at this time. Thank you all for coming. We've got more food.
Yeah, please eat. Also, I think a big part of this group and this club is inviting people to sort of come be devil's advocates and propose holes that they might see, cracks in this idea, so that we can address those and try to learn how to explain them so that everyone understands. So we welcome that.
Thank you, Laisha.
Any burning questions?
How do you see a system like this being implemented? Would you have it be sort of like a community banking system as it would start, where people, how would you get the initial pool of money to get this started? Do you have any thoughts on how that would kick off?
Yes. So the beginning is the one that is, it could be a little tricky to understand how to get this snowball rolling. That's why we have focus on conveying the message, making it clear, making it something that can be replicable anywhere in the world. So it's not about us creating this, it's about here it is. Now this is the technology that we have synthesized, go and implement it. But we are going to implement it. And how we're going to do that is we're going to start with a 3-phase crowdfunding system, in which we start vouching for a small amount of money to gauge support from people, then a little bit of a large amount of money in order to support the distribution of advertisement, something like that, how to reach out to people so that people can see it. But this is only going to happen once we have all the tools in place. And then out of that, the third one would be, the third tier for that would be when we vouch for the starting capital of the first sale. But in here, there's actually friends of us and entrepreneurial, like Conrad, myself, and Lydia. We're starting little businesses, little cells. We have another friend with Ben. He's creating an app called Yana, You're Not Alone, and it's in order to incentivize empathy. So this would be the small cells that are going to begin. But the idea is that once that snowball is rolling, it will be an exponential growth, a viral growth. That is a meaningful question. Thank you.
We also considered creating a website that would act as sort of like, do you know like what Etsy is and the formation of an Etsy page? So it would be like a platform, almost like a social media platform for businesses, and businesses who are motivated in the way that they have to be for this to work, so towards like environmental issues and social issues. And so it would be a platform for them to connect on, and potentially also act as a cell, like this website in itself. So businesses might like pay in a little bit to have a profile, but then it would give them access to connecting with other businesses who are like-minded and have the same sort of like environmental and social motivations. In that way. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
So 2 questions. The first is the model that you said that you have synthesized all the technology and you want to share with others. Like how would that be done? You know, because in the business world they call it intellectual property, but obviously you want this to be open source. I take it. So would it be like a book that you write, or just, you know, because like it is a lot of complex stuff that you're distilling. And then the second question is, Sebastian mentioned the 3 phases, and he mentioned tools in place, and so I was just wondering what those tools are that you want to have in place before you progress to further stages of crowdfunding.
Yes, the idea is to, once we have Seeds of Change is an ongoing process of trying to relate this concept to people, and it's hard, and we all have experience. And Michael Hayes was here earlier, about a year ago. Was it that you were here? Yes, and you saw it before, and how the communication has changed ever since, and it's been there is no intellectual property, but there's got to be a lot of responsibility, because a tool like this could be used for good or it could be used for bad, as blockchain or any other technology. That's why it is important, once there is an explosion of this possibility, it has to reach as many people as possible, so that the idea doesn't fall in the right hands and it's not stepped on. There is, yes, we are, I myself, I'm in the process of writing, and eventually might lead in order to create a book, yes, things like that. But I feel like documentaries and the way in which we have all conveyed this message is what we value the most and the most important thing. And the tools that we were talking about before that happens is to come to this process, reiterate this process of communicating it to people as many times as possible, so that it becomes, we find as Lydia was saying, the holes or the cracks where we're understanding, or where we can, or how can we explain the concept in a more streamlined way. So that has been our focus of our intention.
Did that answer your question? I also think that in terms of like, yeah, these are sort of like our sources, you know, like this is our bibliography per se of like the ideas that, you know, we've been able to sort of like use these ideas and then our personal experiences and our personal outlooks on like sort of how society and the world is today to formulate this like new idea. But we're certainly crediting these technologies and these ideas, but with the hopes that like what we create out of it is not considered intellectual property, and that it's more of like free knowledge that can be spread and inspirational to others. And I think something that we didn't really mention too much, but like I think a big part of understanding Awareness Corps and just all of the ideas behind it, it'll either lead to, I think we all believe that it'll lead to a sort of shift in perspective. And I think the first people who will take the sort of leap to participate in this sort of organization and, you know, like put their individuality aside and their ideas of personal property and profit aside, and commit to, you know, putting 51% of their resources and profit into this organism, they'll sort of already understand it. Like it'll make sense to them, and they'll see the bigger picture of like where this will lead in the future and what this can do for people in the environment. And then we talk about this as being like viral growth, and we use this, what is that chart called of the
law of diffusion of innovation?
Yeah, so like talking about like sort of in the business world, like the initial early, what is it, he already drew it, let's see. The initial
so innovations, the innovators, the early adopters, then you have the chasm, the early majority and late majority.
Right, so like the initial people will be like falling in this realm, like they'll get it, you know, and then like we believe that it'll sort of grow virally, so that once it sort of starts to become an organism and functioning and people can see where it's going, we'll get the sort of early majority and late majority, but it's like learning how to bridge that gap there has been a really big part of our thinking process.
So crossing this gap is where those crowdfunding endeavors will happen, and all that is going to happen over here. But it's, you know, in the beginning, this is a business proven theory.
It's also a product life cycle.
Product life
Kind of
cycle.
up there, yeah. So I've seen this twice now.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of comments for you guys. First, your passion for this is always great to see. One of the things that I think you guys have, UNCA, and then I think students in general, is to try to envision